And by the way, I will be recording all the lectures, and then hopefully I'll get uploaded on Microsoft Streams, so that you can have access to it all the time. Right. There has been some changes in the evaluation assessment. Again, why it's tentative? Because we still uncertain whether we're going to continue online or physical. Okay. Obviously, if we are going online, then conducting tests and exams will be a little bit challenging. However, if things abate and we will hopefully we get back into our normal life, then we'll be able to conduct major exams and final exams. As for now, the guidelines is we are following the online assessment guidelines. And one of the guidelines is to limit the weights of major exams and final exams to be about 15 to 20%. Okay. However, if the university decided that all students have to come back and we conduct physical or exams in a physical, physically with your physical presence, then we will increase the exams and final exams weights to be about 20 to 25%. Make sense? So that's why it's still tentative, but this is the the roadmap. Most of the work will be on the coursework, and that includes 7% on attendance and class participation, 8% in class and online discussion, 20% on programming and homework assignments, 10% on the quizzes. That comprises about 40%. We'll have a term project or groups of 3 to 4, which also comprise of 20%. Major exam is 15% and final exam is 20%. Okay, these are those are two. We are restricted by the university guidelines while conducting online assessments. Any questions? Now, of course, I already updated the syllabus with this new plan, and as I mentioned, it is subject to change. So this is a disclaimer from now. It is subject to change. However, I will be updating you anytime that if there are any changes in this plan. So I might have a question here. You can't access the course on Blackboard. That's because I did not activate the page yet. So I'm just waiting for everyone to, I'm waiting just for the, what is that? Registration period ends, and then we will activate our Blackboard, okay? So just to avoid any confusion. So hopefully by end of this week, tomorrow or by Thursday, I'll activate it. Right. Last time we also talked about we had a brief description or brief definition of security, and we said it's a secure system or secure data has to achieve the security of the 3 pillars: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Right. And then we said, okay, so what is the difference between security and privacy? And we ended up with 2 widely accepted definitions of privacy. One is a little bit old. That is the right to be let alone. Okay, meaning that before even the computer or the information era, it means that you have to. Everyone has the right to be confined in his personal space, his personal room, or in other words, nobody should use information or use spread misinformation about him. So this is the broader definition of privacy. But then this was limited, okay, when we came into the information era. Then another widely accepted definition of privacy emerged, which is the fair use of information. Okay, and as I mentioned sometime last lecture, we cannot get off the grid, so we have to share our information either intentionally or unintentionally. So maybe it is acceptable to share some information. However, it is not acceptable to use this information against you in a way that will harm you in one way or another. So this is the 2 broad definitions that we ended up with last lecture. So today, inshallah, delve a little bit deeper into more definition of privacy, and then we'll talk about some technological and non-technological challenges, as well as few example of privacy attacks. Okay. So again, another thing that I found when I encounter, or I was preparing for this course, or even during my PhD studies, I was looking for a global, widely acceptable, or not widely acceptable, but a global definition that everybody agreed on for data privacy, and I could not find it. Okay, so these are, for example, some of the definition of privacy. So it's a little bit extended definition of privacy. One definition says privacy reflects the ability of a person, organization, or government, or any entity to control its own space, where the concept of space takes on different contexts. Okay, so again, this is kind of not necessarily to like cyber or data privacy. It's like it can be extended to any to the definition of privacy in different contexts, even in your daily life, interaction with people, with your family, with your friends, with your work colleagues, and so on, right? So that's why they have this disclaimer. The concept of a space takes different contexts. It can be your physical space, home, at your work, can be your bodily space, meaning like information about your healthcare information, information about your the way you look, for example, the color of your skin. All this kind of example is also called space. Computer space. Now this is kind of takes another context into the cyber world, or even your web browsing space. Let's say the web pages that you visit during your browsing sessions. Now, another definition of data privacy is the claim of individuals, groups, or institutions to determine for themselves when, how, and what extent of information is communicated to others. So you have the control, okay, of what kind of information you want to communicate with others, share with others. Now, this definition, or this this definition of privacy is a little bit recent, after after the kind of what is called the internet era, because as you know, when the internet started, it was kind of a luxury, right? Now it's a necessity. And during from this time from that, like where the internet begins and up to now, companies were starting their business models. And as you know, some of the known or most profitable business models for companies is collecting data, analyze it, and sell it to other third-party companies. Okay, and even before Google and Facebook, there were a lot of companies, third-party companies, who collect, for example, your cookies, okay, and collect your let's say your number of clicks in website. They process it and then they sell it to, for example, advertisement agencies and so on. Now, because of these kind of activities, the data privacy issues in the internet and in general in every application kind of started to be an important topic. The other important data privacy that I believe is also important to not to overlook is the right to be forgotten. What does that mean? Let's say if you shared some information used on some social media platform, there was what is that kind of saying? If it is online, it's always online, right? If it is on the internet, it's always on the internet. Another concept of data privacy is the right to be forgotten. If you uploaded something on particular social media platform, you have the right to take it down anytime you want. Okay, and from this concept, for example, now if you want to go into Twitter, for example, you can delete your old tweets. If you want to go into Facebook, you can control let's say what posts or what comments that you made, you can also delete it, right? Or you can delete your profile altogether. So this is kind of the alignment of the right to be forgotten concept in data privacy. By the way, if you have any comment or any question, please feel free. Just raise your hand, and I'll hopefully I'll be able to check your hands. Abdelillah, Alexar?
Yes, Doctor. I just want to ask, what is the difference between computer space and web browsing space?
Well, okay, computer space is, like maybe it's something before the internet era, right? So think about it like this: if you are in an offline setup, okay, your interaction with the computer can be also tracked, right? So, for example, if you are using your someone's or a public computer, not necessarily connected to the internet, now they can check what let's say what movie did you watch, what files did you edit, and so on, right? But web browsing space is more toward the internet, your interaction with the internet. Okay, so think about it this way.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so often, the information when we talk about data privacy, we this word of information popped up a lot, because there is a difference between data and information, but now it's kind of used interchangeably. Okay, the three levels of data. You have data, raw data. You have information. You store, you process data, and to get information. And there is knowledge. So knowledge is the highest kind of level of data. Now, what do we mean by information or data or private information or data? We usually refer to it as personally identifiable information, and this is kind of an important point to take care of when we talk about the difference between privacy and security. If we talk about personally identifiable information, we're going to talk about privacy, because there are some information that not necessarily personally identifiable. We still need to take, to secure it, right? But it doesn't matter if somebody saw it. Yes, it's a security breach, but it's not a privacy breach. So what do you mean by personally identifiable information? They are something unique to you, okay? And they are something unique that identifies you, like instantly. Your name, your location, your phone, email, IP, SSN, and so SSN, by the way, is kind of the Hawiyya Al-Wataniyya, the social security number, your medical record numbers, and so on. So these are, when we talk about information and data privacy, we necessarily talk about these kind of information, personally identifiable information. So one simple solution that comes into your mind. Okay, if there are some data set that contains such personally identifiable information, just delete it. If they are sensitive and you don't want to, expose it to public, just delete it. Okay, or anonymize it. So anonymity is a term that I'm gonna explain later on. Okay, and in fact there are some regulation and rules that enforce the deletion of any piece of information that identifies certain individual. For example, one of them is HIPAA, which is the Health Information Protection Action, something like this. Anyways, it's a law in USA to protect all health information for all patients. And if you go into the link, there are some set of rules that specify or enforces any medical institution to remove all the information that identifies certain individual. Now let's talk about why privacy is hard. There are, I can categorize it into two aspects: non-technical and technical. From the non-technical point of view, the economics of incentives for preserving the privacy is a little bit unclear. So for example, how much are people willing to pay for a privacy? Think about it this way. If you have product A and product B, okay? And let's say product A doesn't care about privacy, but it's so cheap. Let's say $1 a month. On the other hand, you have product B, which is, you know, like they care about privacy and they use, you know, complex technology, but it's, let's say $10 a month. Which one are you gonna go for? Okay. So are you gonna value your privacy so you pay $10 or $9 extra, or you don't care about your privacy? You know, like let the company do whatever with your data, but you're gonna pay less. So this concept of the incentive is still not maybe not widely clear or not clear to users as well as to companies. So it's again, how much does it cost to provide privacy? Okay, so this is from the economical aspect. We are, you know, like in this course is computer engineering and, you know, like computer science and engineering. So we are engineers and scientists. We are not economists or lawmakers or so on. So these are, I just want to give you around knowledge about, you know, like why privacy is hard. The other important challenge is the psychology and culture of users toward privacy. Now remember, privacy, as I mentioned, there is no global, well agreed on definition of privacy. If you go from one culture to another, privacy means two different things. And I give you an example. While I was studying in KPPM when I was undergrad, I'm not gonna tell the year, there were 3 questions nobody should ask you, or you should not ask anybody else. What is your GPA? When are you graduating? And what is your mother's name, right? So these are the 3 questions that it's considered kind of privacy breach. Now, of course, it depends from one region to another, from one individual to another, right? So I had no problem with sharing my GPA with you know, like my colleagues. I had no problem telling because I was you know, following the plan, so everybody knows when I'm gonna graduate, and at least my roommate knows my mother's names, basically because he's my cousin. So, anyways, he's because, but if you go into different culture, maybe not necessarily these 3 questions. You know, like the concept of privacy is going to be different. Okay, so it is sensitive to individual differences. It is based on the social interactions, and for example, if let's say you are, you know, like say you are with among your friends, okay, sitting, you know, like just chit chatting and talking, and suppose that one of your friends, let's say, he graduated and. Or you know, like somehow he become your boss. Are you comfortable to kind of share the same or you know, do the same talk before and after? No, you know that he you know, like he is your boss now. Of course, it's different. Okay, so it's also susceptible to social interactions, and also it's inherently contextual. So of course, if you talk to your friends, it's gonna be different than talking to your, let's say, for example, your colleagues, your classmates. Okay. The other thing is that there are so many stakeholders when it comes to privacy, from the company that provides the service to the record owner, you say the patient in case of medical health, to the governments, to the analysts, to privacy office, and so on. So it's you know, there are so many stakeholders. Now let me move into the technical challenges of privacy, and there is a link. So I extracted these or I quoted some of the technical challenges from this link below. So feel free to visit this link and kind of read more about it if you want. But I'll try to explain it, you know, one by one. The first challenge is that privacy is a broad and fuzzy term. Okay, so far I did not give you kind of a technical definition of privacy, right? And that is kind of widely accepted. So the other thing is, what does a privacy mean in the internet, and what does privacy mean in, let's say, in another setup, like as I said, like online and offline? There are 2 different there are 2 different concepts. Okay. So in the internet, you are sharing it with the outer world, but in the offline context, you are sharing it with, you know, like the owner of your PC, for example. To what extent are you gonna you know, like preserve the privacy of your interaction with the PC? Also, it is difficult to quantify privacy. We as scientists and engineers, we like to play with numbers, right? So if I tell you, if you talk about weights, okay, this is in kilos. If you are talking about length, it's in meters. But what does the privacy mean? How to quantify privacy? Okay, there is no single unit of privacy. So when again, come back to that scenario, if we have two products, A and B, right? One is $1 and the other is $10, right? A month, let's say. That this is cost. But when it comes to privacy, okay, you cannot say this, oh, this is, let's say, 0.1 privacy and this is 2 privacy, let's say, because there is no unit. So it is important to understand or to kind of measure the privacy. And this is kind of why we, in this course, hopefully, we're going to give you an idea of how to assess privacy and not necessarily measure it, but kind of have a sense of whether the system is private or not, okay? By understanding the under the hood technology or solution that preserve the privacy. The other thing is also the lack of knowledge of, you know, like data privacy and to some extent security in developers and administrators and operators, IT operators in general. And this is a common problem, not necessarily to privacy, by the way. You know, there are always, you know, like this clash between performance and security. Security guys say, oh, this, you know, we have to protect the assets of the company, so we put firewalls, we put access controls, but when it comes to performance, as a web developers, you want the freedom to do whatever you want, to try different things in order to achieve your objective. But if you have, you know, there are so many access controls, so many firewalls, you know, like your freedom is kind of is restricted. So there's always this clash between security personnel and, you know, like web developers or administrators. And that's why in companies, in big companies, they have a CTO, Chief Technology Officers, and they have a CISO, Chief Information Security Officers. And their role is, you know, like to kind of come into a middle ground so that can achieve the perfect balance between privacy and security or / privacy. The other thing is there is a wide range of privacy risks. Okay, so you don't know what information the company or the attacker is looking for. Okay, so you might be kind of naive. You share certain information about yourself, and later on you think that it's, you know, like it's okay to share. But later on you think, or you find out that it has been used against you. Okay, so it is different again to kind of identify all the risks related to data privacy. The other thing is the adversarial capability are rapidly growing. Okay, so the computational power, the techniques that is used to breach the data privacy is rapidly growing. Or even, you know, like it's always safe to say that the offensive power of attackers is, you know, like progressing more in a rate more than the defensive power. Okay, so that's why you have more kind of intelligent and smarter attacks than, you know, like the defensive countermeasures. That's why you have, you know, like from time to time you have some novel viruses or novel ways to attack components in the operating system, mainly because it's attack driven. Okay, so firewalls and viruses kind of wait for the next virus or next attack in order to patch the operating system. It's not the other way around. Okay, so it is also the same concept when it comes to data privacy. Another challenge is that same device, same data, but you have different perspectives. What does that mean? In the link, the author or the blog, he's a assistant professor, but he wrote it as a blog. He gave 2 scenarios. The first scenario, you know, in hospitals, nurses do usually they hold or they carry something called locator. Okay, This locator basically is just to verify where the like the healthcare personnel are, and in case of emergency, they can redirect, or kind of assign nurses to the nearest location or so on. But in the same time, so it is useful, right? It's just to kind of more resource assignment and so on. But at the same time, the nurses, they found, they feel that this locator is a breach of their privacy, because they don't want the administrators to find out their location during breaks. So it's the same device, same data, but it's for different perspective. Now, if this example is still not clear to you, I will give you another example. Way before Twitter and what is that, the other thing? There is a famous platform, forget the name. Not Instagram. I think it's something like Instagram. Anyways, it's called Foursquare. Okay. Anybody knows what is Foursquare?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a kind of check-in application, right? So you go into somewhere, a place, you check in, you share your picture, and maybe give a review. I'm not sure. I'm really bad on social platforms. I only know the famous 3 ones. Anyways, it is useful if you want to, let's say, try a new restaurant and so on. You can go to Foursquare and look for people reviews and maybe pictures. An incident happened that some guy created an application that scraped the data from this Foursquare to find let's say it's something like the application called Find Girls near me. Okay, so and it turns out it started to create some problem with Foursquare users and so on. The moral of the story here is that we are using the same device, the same application, but for different perspectives. One is useful and one not really useful. Another challenge is that if we let privacy loose, okay, meaning the company itself that provide the service does not really care about the privacy, the burden is at the end user. Meaning that he has to read every privacy policy, whether it kind of complies with the regulations or not. He always on the think if this link is safe or not safe. So not everybody have the capability or the capacity to check every privacy policy. I just want to get the service and get move on. So it is a burden on the end user. And why it's a burden? Why it's a challenge? Because if the users feels like I have to do a lot of things, I'm not going to use your service, and so you're going to lose. You're going to lose a lot of customers if you don't provide the kind of ubiquitous privacy, data privacy at the back end. Another technical challenge is the rise of AI and machine learning. And so just let me give you a question, ask you a question. Who attended a course in AI or machine learning? In any level? Okay.
Our training was based on machine learning, and we use machine learning algorithm to estimate car values based on the inputs of the car or characteristics.
Sounds good. So cars input. So what is the first thing, if you are working a machine learning project, what is the first thing that you look for?
Dataset. Dataset,
right? So if you talk about AI and ML, the first thing that you look for is datasets. And how do you get datasets? Basically, there are some companies collect datasets, right? Yeah. So companies collect datasets from users, from customers, whatever. Now the question is, everybody's hungry for datasets, but everybody doesn't care if this dataset breaches privacy or not. Where does this privacy dataset come from? I don't care. Just give it to me, and I want to run my machine learning model. I want to get this profit. I want to publish a paper, whatever, right? So there, it becomes to some unethical practices just to collect data sets. So this is another technical challenge. That's why in one or at least two fields in the machine learning, one is explainable AI, and basically if you are making a decision, you have to explain it. So this is coming from the ethical part of AI. The other thing is what is called privacy preserving AI or machine learning, right? The point here is, how do you use such data set to create an accurate machine learning model, or high fidelity machine learning models, without breaching the privacy of the people. Okay, we're gonna talk about it a little bit at the end of the course, just to show you a few examples. The last challenge that I want to talk about is the balance between utility and privacy. Okay, so what do you mean by utility? Is basically what is the service that is provided by you by this third party compared to the privacy. Okay, obviously if you have strict privacy, you will not get much as a service provided by that company, and vice versa. If you have all the services without taking care of the privacy, then obviously it's kind of it's kind of skewed toward one or the other. So now it will be common discussion. We're going to come over it again and again. Whenever I introduce you and introduce a technology to you, a privacy preserving technology, we always talk about utility and privacy. Okay, how much privacy are we preserving versus how much service are we providing? Now, let me give you any questions so far. But let me give you an example of a data attack. There is a type of attack called data linkage, or sometimes it's called re-identification attack. Basically, it happens as this: you take a data set, okay? You take another data set and you match it somehow, right? And the purpose is to unveil some information that originally not contained in this data set or the other data set. Okay, so by combining those two data sets, you kind of create new information or new knowledge that was hidden in order to get certain information about certain individual. Let me again, I'll try to explain concepts to you using examples. So let me give you a concrete example, and this is a real incident, by the way. In 1997, in US, in Massachusetts state in particular, the governor wanted to start an initiative, and that initiative being releasing some medical data to researchers or to analysts or to public. I forgot his intention exactly, but his objective was to release some a large data sets of including some medical data, and there were a lot of questions. This is a breach of privacy, so he was really confident that whatever data set that we are publishing will be de-identified. If you remember that well, in the slide we talked about de-identification. So this is this rule, or this from HIPAA, from the healthcare. So he was abiding by it. So he was deleting all personally identifying information from this data set. So that it happened that they, they released this. The state had released this public data set, medical data set. So one researcher, she used to be a graduate student at, I believe, Harvard, but now she's a well-known professor. She wanted to challenge him. Okay, so she combined the medical data set that has been published, has been released, and she, for $20, she bought a public data for voting, for voters. Okay, and by the way, in US, voter lists are a public domain, so you can purchase it. And she finds something nice. There are some attributes, some columns that are shared between those two data sets, mainly the zip, the date of birth, and the sex. Okay, the gender of the. And she wanted, I think she wanted to raise a point to the governor. She wanted, you know, like to combine those two data sets to unveil the governor's, in particular, his medical health record. So with a little bit of background, she knows that the governor lives in an area in Massachusetts, in Boston, called Cambridge. There are only 7 zip codes, okay? There are only 7 regions. And so she kind of eliminated a lot of entries, right? So she was looking in particular for 7 zip codes. Among those 7 zip codes that are, you know, like available, or in both data sets, there are only 3 men. Okay. Now, those 3 men, among those 3 men, she checked the date of birth, because again, he's the governor. She knows to some extent how old is he. Now she was able to, you know, by combining 2 available data sets, she was able to get all his medical health record. Again, to raise a point, she kind of emailed, or actually there was no email at that time. She sent him an envelope containing his medical health record to his address. Okay, and this was a famous incident. And later on, she kind of proposed a technique to preserve the privacy against such kind of linkage attack, which is called k-anonymity. We'll talk about it, inshallah. It's gonna be the first technology or solution that we will talk about it to preserve the privacy. Okay. Another famous incident toward the same kind of attack is what is called the Netflix prize. In 2006, the famous Netflix, I believe at that time they did not start with a platform, you know, like with a streaming platform. They used to have something like Blockbuster. So you just, you know, like order a particular title, and they will ship you a CD. Now they wanted to come up with a unique feature to differentiate them between from other competitors like Blockbuster and Redbox and so on. So they wanted to come up with a suggestion feature. Okay, so based on your previous history, we recommend you this title. Okay, this is, by the way, this is very common now on almost every e-commercial application. But at that time, it was something novel. So they have an algorithm. They have their own algorithm, right? But they wanted something more. Okay, so they released, they created something called Netflix Prize. It's a contest. They released a data set that contains the usernames along with the titles of movies. And each for each user, they have kind of about a matrix where every number associated with a movie, and this is kind of the rating. Okay, so for example, every user would have 18K entries that kind of each entry in that row represent the user rating for that movie. Now, to abide to privacy rules, they replaced the names with some random numbers. Okay, the official challenge is they want analysts and researchers to find a technique that is better than their algorithm. And just a side note, this work has been later on. If you are into AI and ML, it was later on indexed as collaborative filtering and matrix completion and so on. And indeed, I think in 2008 there was a team who actually beat the Netflix algorithm. But in 2009, 2 researchers were able to identify individual users by linking their own dataset that was released with another dataset in the famous website IMDb, okay, the International Movie Database website or so. Now, again, there is nothing confidential about, you know, like movie watching, right? But it kind of researchers started, you know, like to kind of it was a kind of wake up call. Okay, so to this kind of attacks, if people were able to kind of match 2 different data sets, okay, and even though, you know, like it's highly unrelatable, but still, you know, like with clever or kind of systematic way of matching, you still will be able to breach the privacy of individuals. Now, so far, okay, it's not really very harmful to know your movie collection or movie ratings. Take the same idea of attack. Now let's talk about, you know, like some serious issues. There is one application called genome-wide association studies, and the goal basically they want to associate or understand the association between diseases, certain diseases, and what is called SNPs. SNPs is in the gene sequence. They want to find certain locations, right? That, you know, like that might give you an indicator that this guy has a disease or not. Okay, so this is the kind of typical setup. So NIH is the National Institute of Health. They take you know, like a sample of DNA from, you know, like a number of candidates with that common disease, and then they try to find these SNPs, okay, to come up with something called MAF, the minor allele frequencies. Now, forget about the whole process. I'm not going to ask you about this, but the risk here is I can infer, you know, any researcher with this publicly available data, I can infer if someone, particular individual, is in that group or not. And remember, this group, they have, you know, they are sharing some common disease. So in particular, you might know if that guy, if that individual has that disease or not. And this is, of course, is kind of serious breach of privacy. Before jumping into another type of attack, do you have any questions so far? Or am I going too fast for you? Anyone?
Doctor, can you go back to the slide now?
Yes.
So what is the point here? It is already they have the same disease. So what they are collecting data from? What is the point? I didn't get it.
Okay. So I think that the point here is when I give the DNA when you know, like when you publish the DNA test. The DNA basically it's a bunch of letters A, G, C, T, and so on, right?
Okay. Okay.
Right. So not necessarily you by looking at this series, you cannot necessarily identify a certain
disease.
Person. No, a certain person. Okay. But if you associate this publicly data set with some other data set, okay.
Okay.
Then you can infer if a certain individual with just maybe a sub-pattern in his DNA sequence if he is in that group or not, if he has that common disease or not.
Yeah, I get it now.
Okay. So the idea again is kind of if you have, let's say, suppose that this is the you know, the data set, the DNA data set that they collected. And this is kind of public data set that you obtained from somewhere. If you can't find this interaction and you match the two data sets, you can actually infer whether a certain individual in that group or not. Make sense? Any other question? Type. Again, we're going to revisit those attacks later on when we talk about the technology, because every technology or every solution, every algorithm is trying to address certain type of attacks. If you took privacy as data security course, before you start talking about the solution or the kind of the security countermeasure, you have to start with what is the attack model, right? You need to understand what the adversary going to do to your system or to your data. What are the, you know, like the type of attack in order to propose a solution. Similarly, okay, here. So in this case, I'm just gonna I just wanted to show you concrete examples of data privacy attacks. Another type of attack is called reconstruction attack. What does that mean? Suppose that you have a data set, okay, and this data set basically is kind of contains some facial photos for certain population, and you wanted to provide this data set to public. However, what you're going to do is you're going to put it in certain platform, and you are allowing the researchers, okay, or users to ask certain questions. For example, how many pictures are there? You get an answer. Then you say, okay, for that, for one guy, how many pixels in that picture? And then you get an answer. So the answer itself does not give any information about your data set. Okay. The problem is if you ask too many questions, if the adversary or the attacker asks too many questions and you always get an answer, then he might be able to reconstruct, right, the information or the data that you originally hiding from him, just by this interaction. So this is an example again. So if the adversary is asking, let's say, K questions, then he put it in his pool and he do something called inversion attack. Then he might be able to reconstruct the face or the picture of one of the individuals in your hidden data set. Now this maybe it seems a little bit fictional and naive, but actually there are some cases, and I will talk about it in details, where consensus basically, and no, not consensus, the census in US زي حاجه زي هيئه الاحصاء والتخطيط عندنا. Okay, they take survey about people, and then at the end they release statistical information. Okay, for example, number of Saudis are this, number of non-Saudis is this in terms of population, number of male to female, number of below 18 to number plus size, and so on. So it just gives you statistical information, not necessarily information about each individual. Now it happened that one guy, he took this public information, statistical, okay, mainly but it's just statistics, an average and so on, and he performed this reconstruction attacks, and then he identified certain or a big number of individuals in terms of their date of birth, their location, their a lot of things, including their medical health records and so on. So they started with kind of an aggregated information for the whole population, and he started asking a lot of questions. Okay, is this, is that, is this, is that, and then he put it in all in one pool, and then he kind of did a reinversion attack, and he reconstructed the original data set. And this is when it was published 5 years ago or so, and it was kind of, again, another wake-up call for this kind of information collection. Okay, there is a solution to this, fortunately, and most ministries, like the survey ministries and so on, they are starting adopting this solution, which is called differential privacy. Okay, so if you are aware of, if you heard this term differential privacy, this is actually a solution to this kind of attack. And by the way, differential privacy is it's in my point of view, it's going to be the most dominant privacy technology that I think every other company will adopt sooner or later. Okay, so it's really important to understand what do you mean by differential privacy. So now the other question is how to achieve privacy, and I see some questions in the chat, I think. Okay, never mind. Now the question is how to achieve privacy. There are technical and non-technical aspects. The first non-technical is by accountability. What do I mean by that? By enforcing data protection laws, policies, and organizational practices to preserve the privacy of users, employees, and customers. And these are some examples of law and policies that are currently existing. This is the HIPAA regulation that you talked about, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Well, anyways, the other thing is the General Data Protection Regulation coming from the European Union, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, the California Online Privacy Protection Act, which is recently released, I think last year. The next class, we're going to briefly talk about some of the laws. Okay, it's really important to understand what are the laws and regulations and policies are there, because you, and inshallah, hopefully after your graduation and take a position at certain, like either a web developer or IT administration, you're going to provide services. Eventually, you're going to provide services to your customers, to your employees, and so on, right? So it's really important to understand to what extent are you should able to provide certain services, okay? And what are the regulations and laws that govern the data privacy of users and employees. Not only that, but you have to maintain the compliance of such laws, okay? Because it's a continuous issue. You cannot say, okay, I'm just going to give you this solution and you forget about it. No, it has to be continuous. Why is that? Because the adversarial attack is rapidly growing, as I explained to you. In case there is a privacy, you have to demonstrate. If there is a privacy breach, you have to demonstrate that, or you have to notify the affected people and demonstrate that actually privacy is being preserved. Okay, so we'll talk about these privacy laws and regulations, inshallah, next class. What matters to us in this course mainly, or the major concern in this course, is the technical solutions. Okay, and I'm just listing here some of the technical solutions that we're going to cover, starting from statistical privacy to differential privacy to cryptography-based privacy, like multi-party computation and so on. We're going to talk a little bit about anonymous communications, being, for example, the Tor network. So so let me ask this question. Who has used Tor before? Raise your hand.
I have used
it. What is Tor, Doctor?
طيب, okay. Who has used it? Abdullah?
Yes, I have used it.
Can you explain what is Tor?
No, it's been anonymous and when you browse, I think.
Yes. Yeah, correct. And let me ask you another question. Why did you use Tor? Just kidding. That was a joke. Tor. Okay. As I mentioned, as Abdullah mentioned, Tor basically is a network. Okay, it was kind of a way to connect to the internet, but or the dark web. It doesn't, and it depends on your. But anyways, it's a communication network. It's something like the internet, and the whole purpose is nobody can trace you. Okay, so you kind of browse pages and so on anonymously. What does that mean? Nobody can track your IP or track your location and so on. Okay, so if let's say a web page received this request, I don't know who had made this request. Okay, so it is a conceptual network, or internet to some extent. It is really bad in performance, and I just know it obviously I tried it, but I don't think anybody actually use it in everyday basis, because it's really like slow and not efficient. Maybe recently I'm not following, but we're gonna at least I'm gonna explain to you what is the concept behind it. Okay.
So Doctor, it is used to traffic analysis? That's a good question. I found that some applications for Tor is actually used for traffic analysis, but the main objective of developing this Tor network is to anonymize the browsers, or anonymize the browsing activity. Okay, so I'm using a word or a term that I did not explain yet. I will explain it in 2 slides, okay, or 3 slides. Okay, so keep the anonymous or anonymized terminology in your head, because I'm going to discuss it later. How to achieve is called another thing is data protection in AI and ML, data privacy preserving AI and ML. Okay, how to preserve the privacy of the collected data
while using it in machine learning. And there are some hardware solutions like ORAM, like the TEAS, the Trusted Execution Environment. There are some, like what they call it, TPM, I think, trusted TM, TPC, I think, yeah, trusted something chip. Usually they put it in next to the CPU so that it kind of performs some attestation. Okay, make sure that every like for the boot sequence, for example, is secure. We'll talk about it. Okay. Now we come into, like it's really important to understand some privacy some privacy terminologies that we're gonna use throughout the course. So I just brought it a little bit earlier so we can like agree on those terms. The first term is called anonymity. Okay, and then we have other things, and we're gonna see the interaction between them, or the relationships between them. But in order to kind of define these terminologies, I would like to give it to you as a concrete example. So this is the setting that we're gonna use in order to define those terminologies, and the setting is as the following. You have a system, and this system composed of senders, okay, at one side, and recipients on the other side. Between the senders and recipients, there are kind of communication network, communication media. So the senders are sending some messages to recipients. Okay, so this is the system, and whoever inside the system, we are going to call it insiders. And actually, there are some. So insiders are really, like they are kind of authorized person to, let's say, send messages among each other. Okay, so are actually the senders and recipients. And there are actually outsiders. They just, their purpose is just, like to look at how the system is, the different components of the system, how they are interacting with each other. So they're not authorized, but they can tap on the the communication network and so on. And of course, the whole thing is called universe. So what is the adversary objective here? An attacker might be interested in understand what communication is occurring. For example, if there is one way is, what is the flow? Is it he just would like to know who are the senders and who are the receivers. Okay, so he would like, okay, so this is, for example, if this is the traffic flow. Okay, he knows that these are the senders and these are the recipients. For example, how many messages are there? Okay, so he can also check what are the patterns of communication exist. Is it like like a heavy communication pattern between certain sender and recipient? Okay, so he is also looking at the patterns, and also a kind of passive attacks. Passive means you're not going to act upon anything. You're just going to observe the communication pattern and actions. But there are also like active attackers where the intention is to manipulate the communication. You intercept a message, change it somehow, and send it. But we're going to focus on the first two for the time being. Whatever we're going to discuss later on, it depends on the perspective of the attacker. What does that mean? It means that me as an attacker, I'm doing observation, right? So whether the attacker is an outsider or an insider, I do some observations. I see that there are a packet of certain size is moving from sender A to receiver B, for example. Okay, so this kind of observation that I'm talking about. He has limited computation capability, so he does not have all the computation power in the world. So from the observation that he makes and the computation capability, we know, or we can define the information available to the attacker. So again, this assumption is really important to understand, to realize or recognize what type of attacks that he might cause. Okay. So having his perspective, he will use all the available acts to him to infer what is called item of interest. So the item of interest can be a subject meaning a person, a sender and a receiver, a message, okay, if there is a message in the communication channel or no, an action, meaning this sender did send, and this receiver did receive something. Okay, so this is kind of what is called the item of interest. Right. There are some implicit assumptions that we're going to make. Again, I'm just giving you the what is called the attack model, just to set up the definition for you. Adversary never has access to messages content to get information about senders and receivers. Okay, so he can see that there is a message going on, but he doesn't have the content. And why is this reasonable assumption? Anybody want to share that? Why is this reasonable assumption that we assume that the adversary himself cannot have access to the message content?
Maybe because it's encrypted or something.
It's encrypted, right? This is a reasonable assumption. Whenever you access your Wi-Fi, you have to add some password, right? WPA encryption or so. So it's always encrypted. So I don't know what is the content of that message. So this is a reasonable assumption. Another assumption is that the knowledge, the perspective of the attacker, or the knowledge of the attacker always increases. Okay, if I see observation A and then I see observation B, my knowledge is always increasing. I cannot like erase knowledge that I have. My knowledge always increasing. So this is another important aspect that I want you to keep in mind. So we'll have five more minutes. Just gonna go over the definition of anonymity, and then I'll leave you there. These are the type of attackers. We have either insider. Those threats are kind of the insider attacks. They are the ones that authorized to interact with the system, or it can be outsiders. They are unauthorized, but they still can see the interaction within the system. What do you mean by anonymity? It says that anonymity is the state of being not identifiable within a set of subjects. Okay, this set of subjects called anonymity set. What does that mean? So let me give you an example here. If we in this ground circle or ground oval here, this is called the sender anonymity set. Now, suppose that with observation, you know that those messages, whatever, pick one message, that this message was sent by this group to the left. Can you tell me, okay, which sender exactly sent this message? Okay. What I'm going to tell you is that, there is a probability of 1/5, because in this group, there are 5 senders. Each one of them might be sending this message equally likely, right? Right. So this message can be sent by either 1 of 5. So the probability that this message is sent by a sender, a particular sender, is 1/5. Right. So this is basically anonymity. Okay. So the anonymity set is the set of similar subjects. Okay. Why they are similar? Because they are considered as senders. Okay. Suppose that again, this is a one-way channel. These are the senders and these are the receivers. Okay. Or they are kind of similar attributes. They share the similar attributes. Then we can group them in one group called the anonymity set. Okay. I think I see a question here. Okay. طيب. Now, let's say if we have a group of anonymous set inside a bigger group of anonymity set, we can say that they are all anonymous. Okay. So the anonymity, if there is anonymous set, let's say there is another circle here, right? That circles the lower 3 senders. Inside this big anonymity set, they are all kind of anonymized. Okay. Type. Now the question is, remember, one of the challenges how to quantify privacy. Now let me ask you this question: how to quantify the anonymity of a subject? How to quantify if a subject is anonymous or not?
You didn't know how it was sent. How was the form or where it will go?
So let's say, for example, you have 5 possible senders in this anonymity set, right? Can anybody suggest a quantification of anonymity?
You cannot trace the message back to a particular sender.
That's true, but this is the kind of the definition of anonymity. But I'm saying how to quantify it. Like let's say how much How much privacy is there?
Maybe the probability of identifying him,
What is that probability?
which is in this case 1/5,
1/5. Why 5?
because we have
Because 5 is the size of the anonymity set, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this here quantification is kind of straightforward. It's 1 over the anonymity set. The problem, what is the problem with this definition of anonymity? And I can tell you the problem. It doesn't take into consideration the perspective of the attacker. Okay? Recall that the anonymity set cannot increase because the knowledge of the attacker cannot decrease. That is always increasing. So what should happen to the anonymity set? It always decreases because when I accumulate more and more knowledge, the anonymity set always decrease. And this is an example. If I'm me an attacker, suppose in this example, right, we have anonymity set of 5. But if I am an insider attack and I know this, for example, I have control over this guy and this guy. So whatever message that in the middle will not be sent by the nodes that I'm considering or I'm controlling, right? So what should be the anonymity set now?
1/3.
1/2.
1/3. So now there is a 33% that this message is sent by this attack. While in previously, what was the percentage of this message being sent by this attack, by this guy? 1/5, which is 20%.
20%.
Now the privacy has, or the knowledge increased. See my point? So which is better? If you have 2 guys, okay, the anonymity set is 2. What is the probability that one of them is sent this message? 50%. So there's 50-50 chance. If we have 3, right? What is the probability that this guy sent the message?
33.
33.
So the more senders, the bigger the anonymity set, the better the privacy or the worse the privacy?
The better privacy.
The better privacy, right? So I will leave you with this. We'll continue, inshallah, next class, where we, inshallah, hopefully will finish the definition of all terminology and then start the privacy laws. There are some references here, and also there is a kind of suggested reading list for as a preparation for next class. I will upload this lecture set on Teams, and I will also have a copy on Blackboard if I activate it. Okay, so sorry I took a couple of more minutes from your time, but take care and see you next week, inshallah. If you have questions, just let me know now. Muhammad, عندك سؤال؟
Doctor, can we view Sunday class on stream or?
There is a problem with Teams. I'm not sure if it is uploaded